These days, I often lack the motivation for socializing. The pandemic's restrictions were a hidden blessing, but now that things are returning to normal and I'm invited to more events, I sometimes struggle to discern whether I'm prioritizing safety and comfort or simply finding it difficult to decline invitations. How can I develop clarity regarding what truly matters to me beyond relying solely on my inner voice? This is a great question. And I'll tell you why, because I do think that the pandemic tweaked us all in some good ways, and then in some ways that are like, yeah, that rub. So I feel you. I feel the question, and I know what you're asking. And I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think that the pandemic made us really feel that hermit within. We had to get comfortable with it. We had to go in and be really introspective. And then when we came out of it, it was like we were a lot more sensitive, especially if you really were doing some of the work during that time. That we came out, we were more sensitive, and they were like, yeah, I don't really have tolerance for this, and this. Like, I don't really want to go somewhere just to like have something on my calendar. So I get it. And I think that that's where you have to kind of get just a little bit more inside and say, what is my intention? One of the practices I like to do is at the beginning of the day, I write 3 words that have to do with an emotion that I want to feel within the day. So it's about really setting the intention of what do I want to feel? And then when you have an invitation to something, you can say to yourself, just like feel into yourself, try to get out of the mind, but the mind is always going to be there. And so that's fine. But then take those 3 emotions and say, you know what, is that event or that dinner with that person or that gathering going to help me feel this way? And maybe it's the 3 words you want to feel for the month, or maybe you had 3 words for the year that were the emotions that you wanted to feel, and just gauge yourself like, okay, does that really resonate for me to do that? And sometimes we have to just push ourselves to say yes, right? And that's the discernment that only you know, that sometimes, yeah, you're being a little bit too much of a hermit because maybe your mind's already judging like, oh, I don't know. I mean, I had that happen recently, actually. I got invited to something. I'm super excited to go. And then at the last minute, I was kind of like, I don't know. Are these going to be my people? Like, is it going to be a waste of my time? And Spirit said, Beth, go. And I went, and it was the most beautiful gathering that I could have ever on all levels expected. And if I would have listened to my mind and my little hermit self and my like, oh, I'm just going to stay home self, I would have missed out. I met new people. There were some people there that I resonated with. There were some people I didn't. But for the most part, it was a beautiful event. And I was so happy that I had gone. So I think it depends upon where you're at. If you've been doing tons of social things, then yeah, back it off. But if you haven't and you're a little bit more on the hermit side, say yes. Tune in. Does it feel like when I tune in that it's something that's going to help me with those emotions that I want to feel? And if not, then say, okay, I'm going to pass. Show me something else. Or here's one other thing that comes to mind. I really like to use this. When I get a hit on something like yes or no, then I say, okay, help validate for me. Validate whether or not this decision is right. Like if I've said yes, but I'm like, oh, but there's still just a little question mark, just ask for signs. I mean, you can make it fun and say, Spirit, drop a white feather on my path, for me to know if I need to go on this trip that I got invited on, right? So you can make it fun. And then just know that you're going to be given the sign. I'm going to find a coin on the street and it's going to be heads up, or, whatever you want to make it up to be. And then you can ask for the signs, and then you can also feel that support from another level that kind of gets you around the mind, because that's what we're trying to do, is like unravel the mind and all of the narrative that the mind is trying to tell us to hold us back sometimes from living in spirit. And let's not blame the mind. The mind is a good thing. The mind tells us if the stove is hot, we don't have to touch it again. We've learned that. So we don't want to make the mind bad. We just want to have the mind in its rightful place, which is the back seat, so that our soul can drive and spirit can really lead the way through ease and grace. So thank you so much for asking that question. It's a great one. And I think one that a lot of us are I'll say struggling with, but grappling with as we come out of such an interesting time, and as we're about to move into even more interesting and possibly turbulent times, depending upon how you want to look at it. I am always so appreciative of all the questions that you ask. Please go to bethbell.me. There's so much happening over there, lots of new stuff being launched. You can ask more questions. There is the Awaken Inner Wisdom community membership coming. It may already be there if you're watching this on replay. Please come to bethbell.me. The Awakening Healing Handbook, Psychedelics Resource Guide, Herpes Handbook, so many resources, the Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics book if you haven't read it. I would love to share more stories with you, more insights, more wisdom, and I can't wait to see you next week. Please join me 11:11 Sunday mornings. All right, until then, wishing you much bliss and love.